I am Maricel Camaso Parkeron, reporting the layman terms of language and its uses. What are layman terms of language? Layman terms means simple language that can be understood by the average person. It's synonymous with plain English and refers to taking the perspective of someone who isn't an expert in speaking in layman terms can mean omitting any unknown jargon, defining scientific term, or avoiding slang. Jargon means special words or expressions that are used by a particular profession or group and are difficult for others to understand. Origin of layman terms. As an adjective, lay initially meant non-clerical. Thus, a layman or lay person was someone who was not part of the clergy or had a profession that was not religious. Layman involves to refer to a person who was uneducated or non-professional, and it eventually involved to refer to the regular people who are not expert or professionals in field. Use layman's in sentence. We will almost see layman's terms preceded by the prepositions in order the verbs using. We can use this phrase at the beginning of a sentence, at the end, or anywhere in the middle. For example, in layman terms, the defendant is the person who is accused of the crime. The defendant, or in layman terms, the person who accused of the crime, entered the courtroom. As the defendant entered the courtroom, Ellen asked me to explain the proceeding using the layman terms. If you're in a doubt, ask yourself whether you can substitute plain English or in simple terms in place of layman terms and still have the sentence make sense. Goals and methods of science and linguistics. The science of linguistics is dedicated to the scientific study of language. So let's talk about the main goal of this linguistic. The main goal of linguistics is, like all other intellectual disciplines, is to increase our knowledge and understand of the world. Since language is universal and fundamental to all human interactions, the knowledge attained in linguistics has many practical applications. The science of language encompasses sounds, grammar, meaning, and much more. Linguists apply the scientific methods to the study of language, making observations, forming and testing hypotheses, developing models and theories. Scientific methodology in linguistics. As we know, that linguistics is scientific study of language. The approach and methodology of linguistics is scientific. Like a scientist, a linguist observes his data. Linguist uses by observing simple listening and phonetics transcription and uses various instruments like oscillograph, endoscope, laryngoscope, and etc. A linguist has his own language laboratory too. Like a scientist, a linguist develops hypotheses, make generalized statement in the favor of fact of language. When a linguist makes his statement about language, he makes it on the basis of observation. First, he observes linguistics, even he finds some similarities and construct on the basis of which he makes sounds. Like any scientific discipline, linguistics too is not static. Viewpoints and theoretical methods in the fields change even in fundamental ways from time to time. So next topic is scientific methods. Research is based on scientific method in any fields of science. It comprises on the following steps. The first step is observations. Observations consist of receiving knowledge of the outside world through our senses or recording informations using scientific tools and instruments. Any data recorded during an experiment can be called an observations. Like for example, when you're observing or watching an apple fall from a tree, that's called an observations. Number 2, hypotheses, suppositions or suppose, explanation made on the basis of limited evidence as a starting point for further investigations. Number 3 is experiment, a scientific test in which you perform a series of actions and carefully observe their effects in order to learn about something. An example of experiment is when you use test tubes and chemicals in a lab to complete a project and to try to better understand chemical reactions. Number 4, result. It is the result of something ended or the outcome of some actions. For example of results is the result of DNA tests or the result of examinations. Generalization. A general statement or concept obtained by influence from a specific case. When you make a statement about all or most of the people or things together, you are making generalizations. For example, all birds have wings. Many children eat cereals for breakfast. That is one of the examples of generalizations. Verification of result. Verification is the product of checking one or more aspects of the research process to ensure that they are true representations of what actually occurred or are clearly derived from the analysis. Within qualitative research, this often occurs once the raw data have been gathered. Next is theory. It is a carefully thought out explanation for observations of the natural world that has been constructed using the scientific methods, and which brings together many facts and hypotheses. That's all the scientific methods. Principles of linguistics. There are two principles that prove linguistics as science. The first one is verification principles. The principle that no statement is meaningful unless it could verify by observations, standard scientific method, applied to the data provided by observations. Number 2 is reductionism. The principles of the sciences, some more basic than others, and that in the grand sciences of unified science, the concept and prepositions of the less basic sciences were to be reduced. That's all my report, and thank you for listening and watching. I hope you understand something. Thank you very much.